It was an ordinary Tuesday evening, or so I thought. The house was calm and still, just as it often was. After a long day at work, I had returned home a little later than usual, grateful for the silence after a stressful meeting at the office. The house felt peaceful, the kind of peaceful that I often cherished. My stepson Liam had come home a little earlier than usual, his car neatly parked in the driveway. At 21, Liam was no longer a boy, but a young man exuding a quiet confidence that contrasted with the subtle hesitancy I sometimes noticed in him when interacting with others. I kicked off my heels and set my briefcase down, eager to unwind for the evening. The sun had already set, casting a soft glow through the windows, and the house seemed to be settling into the familiar routine of an evening at home. But as I stood in the living room, I noticed a faint sound coming from upstairs, the hum of running water. My instincts told me that Liam had likely gone for a shower, something that wasn't unusual. He'd been working out more recently, and I figured a hot shower would be his way of relaxing after a session at the gym. But for some reason, that sound seemed different. It wasn't the usual rush of water that echoed through the house. No, this time it felt oddly heavier, almost like the atmosphere in the house had shifted. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was something about the sound of the water that didn't sit quite right with me. It felt like a signal, like the calm before a storm. Despite the nagging feeling tugging at my gut, I decided to head upstairs to check on things. Maybe I was just overthinking, I reasoned. I tried to shake off the strange unease, but it lingered. My feet felt heavier with each step, as if I were walking toward something that was going to change everything. As I reached the landing, I realized the sound of water was louder now. It was coming from the bathroom just down the hallway. I could see the door was slightly ajar, and the steam from the shower was already beginning to seep out into the hallway. It was an oddly inviting sight, until my curiosity, or perhaps something more, drove me to move closer. Now let me be clear, I hadn't intended to intrude. I wasn't the kind of person who walked in on anyone, let alone my stepson, while they were in the bathroom. But something about the moment made me pause in front of the door. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the knob as if some invisible force was urging me forward. There was an inexplicable tension in the air that made me feel both anxious and strangely drawn to the room, and so, despite myself, I slowly pushed the door open just enough to catch a glimpse of what was happening inside. What I saw next is something I will never forget. There, under the hot spray of the shower, stood Liam. The water was cascading down his body, droplets clinging to his skin, steam rising around him like an ethereal cloud. For a moment, I was frozen, not entirely sure what I was seeing. My mind scrambled to catch up with my senses. His body was glistening with water, his muscles defined, and I couldn't help but notice the way the light from the bathroom illuminated his toned figure. I had seen him before, of course, but never quite like this. This time it felt different. He didn't seem to hear me at first, he was focused on his own movements, washing off the day's sweat, or so I thought. But then my eyes traveled downward, and that's when everything changed. He was gently washing his most private part. The motion was deliberate, almost meditative, and for a brief moment, I couldn't tear my gaze away. My breath caught in my throat, my heart started to race, and my stomach churned. The reality of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks. I was witnessing something that was never meant to be seen. The dynamic between Liam and me had always been one of respect and distance, but now I felt as if a line had been crossed, a boundary shattered. I stood there for what seemed like an eternity, unsure of what to do next. I wanted to turn away, to leave the room and pretend this never happened, but I couldn't move. It wasn't just about him being in the shower, it was about the way the atmosphere had shifted, the strange intimacy of the moment, and the way my body seemed to react to it. Then, just as I began to collect my thoughts, he turned. The movement was slow, as if he was sensing something in the air. His eyes met mine with an intensity that I wasn't prepared for. There was no hiding it, he saw me. And for a fraction of a second, time seemed to stand still. His expression flickered between surprise and something else, something unreadable. His face turned slightly red, as if embarrassed, but his eyes never wavered from mine. The silence in the room felt suffocating. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, and the tension between us was palpable. I couldn't move. I wanted to speak, to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. What could I possibly say in that moment? It was as if the universe had decided to pull back the curtain on a moment I wasn't meant to witness. Finally, Liam broke the silence. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but it cut through the air like a blade. I didn't mean for you to see that. His words hung in the air between us, and I was left to process what had just happened. I felt a rush of conflicting emotions: shame, confusion, curiosity, but also something deeper, something that I couldn't quite explain. I turned and quickly left the bathroom, my heart still racing. The encounter had left me shaken, and as I walked away, I couldn't stop replaying the scene in my mind. I had just walked in on my stepson during an intimate moment, and I wasn't sure how to process it. I knew I couldn't just ignore what had happened, but I also knew that confronting him about it would change everything. That night, the house felt eerily quiet, even more so than before. I couldn't shake the feeling that things had shifted permanently. What happened in that bathroom was something neither of us would ever be able to forget, and I couldn't help but wonder how this would change the dynamic between us moving forward. When would we act as if nothing happened, or would this be the moment that would linger, altering our relationship in ways neither of us could anticipate? Only time would tell.